Welcome back. I'm Rick Sanchez. We heard just a short time ago from the former chief of staff of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. You heard my conversation with him. I want to turn now to Gaith al-Omari. He's a former advisor to Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. The Free Gaza movement says it is sending more ships to challenge the Israeli blockade. You know, I can't help but wonder, is that a smart move? Is that a wise or safe move?
I actually don't think that it's a wise move. I think it's an attempt by some of the organizers to score political points. But you can be sure that as long as the siege continues, attempts like this and political provocations like this will continue, and people will use them. Hamas is benefiting from what happened a couple of days ago with the flotilla. You see Iran using it. You see the Turkish Islamists using it. So as long as the siege continues, you will continue having these kinds of actions will inevitably result in tragic situation like we had recently.
There's something interesting about this story, and I think you heard my conversation moments ago with Mr. Birnbaum. It seems like Israel was played in this situation. They were provoked in such a way so that they would respond. Many are arguing they overreached in their response, and now they're getting an awful lot of bad press, not to mention people protesting against them all over the world. But were they unfairly provoked? And as the video today shows, what is your reaction to the fact that many of those soldiers did seem to be coming under attack when they fired?
All right. And first of all, I think it would be a mistake to blame the soldiers. I think what is needed right now is an extensive, credible, independent investigation, which has been called for by the UN, but also by President Obama and others, to look into the facts of this issue. That's the only way to lay this story to rest. But once we do that, we have to go back to dealing with the root causes, with the issue of the blockade. How do we ease the life for Gazan civilians, reconstruct the Gazan middle class without benefiting Hamas in doing this?
Well, isn't one of the ways to do that to somehow get responsible persons like yourself to try and convince Hamas to stop saying that Israel does not have a right to exist?
Hamas has to do two things. First of all, accept Israel as a state that will be there in the region, that has a right to exist, but also to stop using violence and terrorism. And this has been the position of both President Abbas, Prime Minister Fayyad, and the international community. Hamas right now is holding 1.5 million civilians in Gaza hostage to its policies. And I must say Israel has been playing into Hamas's hand and strengthening its argument by this blockade, which has economically benefited Hamas, which has militarily benefited Hamas.
Why is that, though? I mean, I think it happens in this country as well. You go out there, you talk tough, you become a real hardliner, and you get real popular, even if what you're saying doesn't make sense. Is that to a certain extent what's going on in Gaza with Hamas? Is that why they were elected democratically, why they're still liked by many of the people there?
I mean, first of all, their popularity ratings have diminished after people have seen their style of government. But I think the main reason for Hamas's success is the failure of the peace process. As long as there is no peace, as long as negotiations fail to deliver to the public, those who talk about violence, terrorism, what they call resistance, will have some traction. Ultimately, occupation is an untenable situation, it's an unfair situation, and it lends itself to manipulation by groups like Hamas and their sponsors in Iran and elsewhere.
And the peace process, or lack thereof, is the fault of not just the Palestinians and the Israelis, but this country, the United States of America, correct? And not just this administration, but all the others that came before it.
And there is a lot of blame to go around. The question is, what do we do with this? Do we look backwards and start trying to point fingers and everyone has their story? Or do we look forwards? What I see now is an administration that is vigorously attempting to solve the issue. Like previous administrations, maybe some mistakes were made, but the only way that we can avoid something like this happening in the future is to move forward with the peace process. Once we have peace, it will be hard for Hamas and others to continue advocating for their violence and terrorism.
Mr. Al-Omari, you state your case and defend your cause well. My thanks to you, sir, for taking time and taking us through this and giving us your side of the story in this case as well. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Rick, for having me. Thank you.